Hello and welcome to the program which looks at the Holy Land. I am Paul Calvert. Jeremiah 49 verse 37 from the New King James Bible says this, "For I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies, and before those who seek their life. I will bring disaster upon them, my fierce anger, says the Lord, and I will send the sword after them until they have consumed them."
I'm with Jonathan Feldstein from Genesis 123 Foundation, and we're talking about Israel's strike on Iran. Now, what happened, Jonathan, last night with Israel and Iran?
You mean other than waking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, we had an air raid siren because Israel launched a preemptive attack on Iranian. It appears I've been trying to keep up and follow all the details, but there's so many. We launched a preemptive strike on Iranian nuclear facilities, military facilities, and military leaders. And from everything I've read so far, it's been successful taking out. One of the things that I specifically admire in the military success, but also pride as a nation, is that we're not carpet bombing them. You know from living here that as soon as the Iranians start to retaliate, their missiles and drones will attack cities and civilian infrastructure without any distinction. And when you look at the buildings that were attacked, specific people on specific floors and specific buildings, and successfully taking out much of the top Iranian military leadership, I'm really proud of the success, and I'm really proud of the fact that it's very targeted and humanitarian, because it's important to note, and most Iranians know this because they don't like their own regime anyway, that we're not against the Iranian people, we're against the Islamic regime. And that's where the source of the problem is. So right now, as we speak, we're waiting on what appears to be an imminent reprisal from Iran, and this may go on for a few or several days.
Sounds like there's 100 drones heading this direction. Now, when the siren went off, was that telling you that Israel was attacking Iran, or was that saying that Israel could be under attack as well?
Right, that's a good question, because I was asleep and I didn't get any advance warning. Recently, when we've been getting missile attacks from the Houthis in Yemen, it comes with a warning about a minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes in advance, saying a detection of a missile launch has been made, and please be prepared that there may be a siren in your area. I assumed that that's what this was, and because I was asleep, that I just missed the advance warning. But what it appears is that the Home Front Command, the Army, activated the air raid sirens, if not all over the country, certainly in major parts of the center of the country where the majority of Israelis live, simply as a precaution, because we had maybe at that point just hit some of the initial targets, and with the missiles, should they have responded immediately, the missiles could get here in a few minutes. So I believe that was somewhat precautionary as compared to there's something imminent on the way and now you need to take cover, which I think that shortly after we finish this conversation, we may be having.
Are there any special rules today at the moment from the Home Front Command because Israel has struck Iran?
Yeah, indeed. So the first thing we heard was that all schools were canceled, public workplaces are closed, public gatherings are prohibited. Shortly after all of this went down, I got text messages from my synagogue saying that all the prayer services had been canceled. So certainly people are not going out in public gatherings. I did run out. I didn't know if stores would be open, but they sort of have to be, because remember, it's Friday, it's the eve of Shabbat, and many people are getting ready, not just getting ready for Shabbat, but also now stocking up, as I did, with milk and eggs and bread and just some other very basic things in the event that supply chains are disrupted and we're not able to get these things. So the stores were open and people's shopping carts were quite full. That's what I noticed.
Shabbat is coming up very soon, so will you still be getting news and listening to the news even though it's Shabbat?
You know, that's a great question. I've never in my life done that. In other instances, I've left my phone on, which is almost not necessary because we get the air raid warnings anyhow. And I don't know if there's a need to leave my phone on unless I'm desperately needing to communicate with others. The reason we unplug, or I should say the only reason we would violate the rules of Shabbat, is in the event of something that's actually life-threatening to us. If something's life-threatening to me, that doesn't mean it's life-threatening to my children who live in Jerusalem or in Samaria or in who are going away to Tel Aviv. So I don't necessarily need to be online. I do feel like I need to be in touch or available should something come up. We did purchase an old analog phone in the event that electricity goes out so that I can plug in a regular old-fashioned phone and still have phone service through my landline. I don't know what we're going to do yet in terms of leaving on a TV or leaving a phone on but leaving it on silent. I don't know if it matters all that much. I certainly don't need to update my family overseas. Of course, they're panicked, not knowing, but the truth of the matter is, how many times can you answer a text message that says, "Are you okay?" My feeling is if something's not okay, that's when they need to hear from us, not every half hour or hour when they're anxious about it.
Was this strike necessary, and is Iran a threat to Israel?
Well, we don't know if that's a present tense or a past tense, but for sure Iran has been a massive threat, and what I have read and seems to be being revealed for the first time in the depth, that it's documented now that Iran was that much closer to being able to produce not just a nuclear weapon, but I think I read, if I'm not mistaken, 15 nuclear weapons. And it's also important to note that today, Friday, the 13th of June, which is the day that the attack was launched, is the 61st day after President Trump gave the Iranians 60 days to make a deal. So my assessment, and I have no military background, I have no intelligence background, and I have no unique contacts that are whispering anything in my ear, but my sense all along has been whether they were an imminent threat today that needed to be taken out today, or it could have been pushed off a week or a month or 2 months, or should have been a month ago. What we do know about the Islamic regime is that they're serious about acquiring a nuclear weapon. And we know that they're serious, at best, blackmailing the world with such a weapon, or worst case, they'll actually use such a weapon. So I've advocated, and I'm not a warmonger, you know this, I've advocated for a number of months or more that we're at that point where the military targets, the nuclear facilities, and if it were up to me, the supreme leader himself would all be targeted, and let the Iranians take back their country and go and rewind the clock to 1978 to an Iran that is not a threat, not just to Israel, but to the world. And to me, that's almost an impossible utopian situation. But yeah, I do believe, Paul, that we were at that juncture and the timing was right, had to be now. And I'm glad we did it, even though there may be some very severe repercussions.
Crude oil prices have went up because of this, which affects everybody around the world. So do you actually see this escalating into something bigger? We obviously know that 100 drones are coming. We don't know how that's going to escalate, but do you think it's going to escalate into something bigger?
I think it definitely can escalate into something bigger. I don't think that Israel is done with its strikes. I think probably literally when you use the term letting the dust settle, we know certain things that were successes, but these big, deep underground nuclear facilities that they built, I don't know that there's a good intelligence yet, or good intelligence that's being shared as to how much of it was destroyed and how many times that those facilities may need to get hit again. By the way, one thing I'm also pleased with is that these facilities are not unlike Gaza, where Hamas built its terrorist infrastructure in and among and underneath civilian facilities. In Iran, the nuclear facilities and military facilities are far enough away that they can be attacked very strongly without civilian casualties. So I'm very pleased about that. It's hard to say how much this will continue to escalate. Part of the answer is how well the initial strikes have been and what capacity that leaves the existing regime. But again, Paul, I'm praying. I see more than ever before. I mean, you live here. There are prophecies that take place, and so many prophecies relate to Israel. It's very unusual. And I wrote about this recently. We did a podcast about this. It's very unusual to have a specific place mentioned in a prophecy, but that's the case in Jeremiah 49, where God himself says that he will destroy Elam, which is modern Iran, and its weapons. The text isn't weapons of mass destruction, but it's big weapons. These were their big weapons. I'm seeing something remarkable taking place there.
What is your prayer for Israel at this moment?
You always do that, and that's very good. My prayer is that we should continue to be successful militarily with no losses. My prayer is that the leadership, not in a political way, but the leadership should continue to have the necessary divine guidance in plodding forward as we need. My prayer is that 10 million Israelis will not be living in fear, but in relative security, even with the tension that's going on. And my prayer is that not only will Iranians rise up to take back their country, and we will quickly see the end of the Islamic Republic of Iran, but that will also help the tentacles of the Islamic Republic to wither before us and see the death of Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah and a world at peace more than we've seen in 5 decades.
You have your own podcast and you're always up on the news. What is your website address for people who'd like to know more about your work?
Thank you, Paul. So the Genesis 123 organization is on all the social media and can also be found at genesis123.co. And the podcast is called Inspiration from Zion. We've had some great episodes recently and another couple of exciting ones coming. That's on all platforms where somebody can listen to podcasts. It's again called Inspiration from Zion.
Well, Jonathan, thank you very much for sharing today.
Always a delight, Paul. It should be a Shabbat Shalom for all of us.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.